This is Just a Thought, a podcast for parents ready to change their mind and change their lives. This is Christina Stead, and this is Just a Thought, episode number 41. Connection and Correction. Hey there! We're in the middle of summer. Hope you guys are having a good summer. I love summer. It's been awesome. So, when my girls were younger, I would say I'm the mom out loud to try and convince myself and them that I was, in fact, the mom. Sometimes I was pretty sure they could only hear me if I said, ice cream, but they'd just ignore me the rest of the time. That was the only time it seemed like they could hear me. My husband and I dealt with a lot of challenging behaviors with our girls in their toddler years, mostly due to our inconsistency in discipline, our high expectations, and our lack of connection with ourselves, each other, and them, as well as mental health challenges that we were dealing with. But what made things even more painful for me was I took all my children's behavior personally and felt if I could only learn just the right way to discipline, then I could have good, well-behaved children and I could pat my mama back and feel validated. But as long as they continued to misbehave, I was doomed to feel guilty and resentful. Why is it that instead of focusing on how we're showing up, we want to focus on how our children and our spouse are showing up to feel validated on the job that we're doing? That was the case for me anyway. And oftentimes it still is, but I love the awareness I've gained around it now. I can see that that way of measuring is extremely disempowering. In my opinion, it's a lot more useful to measure my mothering or wifing or humaning on how I'm showing up, what I'm thinking, how I'm feeling, the actions I'm taking. Those are the things that I can actually control. And it's so frustrating trying to control everything and everyone else because they aren't in my control. I have two things I want to say about this topic. First, connection is a thought. It happens in our brains. We might believe we feel connected to someone who doesn't even know who we are, right? If you think of like celebrities or podcast hosts, right? We might listen to them and feel like we're best friends with them and they don't even know who we are. And someone might feel connected to us and we might not even feel connected to them. This happens all the time. This is how we know connection happens in our head. This happens sometimes with my husband and I, where one of us feels connected and the other feels disconnected in our relationship. So what can we do if one of us is feeling disconnected? Or when we're feeling disconnected from someone we want to feel connected to? I think the first thing we can do is become aware of the thoughts we're thinking that are leading us to feel disconnected. For example, I sometimes feel disconnected from my husband if I don't feel like he's making time for me, or if we haven't done enjoyable things together for a while, or if we disagree on something. But I'm learning that if I can flip the thought around and ask myself, what do I want from him specifically? What do I want to do with him? Am I willing to try and make those things happen? How do I think I'll feel if those things do happen? Like, for example, if my husband and I go out on a date, how do I think that going on a date is going to make me feel? Will it make me feel fun, happy? Then I can choose what feeling I'm wanting to feel, grab onto that, and start generating thoughts that make more of that feeling, that make me feel that way. It's so much easier to connect when I'm generating the feeling I want to feel than when I'm stuck in despair and victim mode and feeling like I need to change everybody to feel happy. This can be applied to our children too, right? Our kids don't usually say, I feel disconnected, Mom. Usually they act out. They disobey, they cry, they yell, some get violent, some withdraw. What they're trying to say is, I'm feeling disconnected. I'm feeling unloved. Now, we're not capable of making our children or our spouse or anyone else feel connected. That's out of our control. But we can do things that motivate connection, and we can feel connected to them, even if we think they might not feel connected to us. The reason I'm talking about connection is I don't think it's useful to correct our children until we're connected to them, or until we feel we're connected to them, I should say. When we're feeling disconnected and resentful, we're usually working from our lower brain, and we usually do things that make the situation more of whatever we're feeling. If we're feeling angry, we bring more anger to the circumstance. If we're feeling calm, we bring calm. And when it comes to discipline, I found that when I focused on being present and connected with my children, I don't need to discipline nearly as often. When there's connection, I have fair expectations of them, or more fair anyway. I don't know if it's ever perfect, but I realize that I make mistakes too. And just because I want them to do something, it doesn't mean they'll do it. So depending on the importance level of what I want them to do, I can choose to discipline them when things don't happen the way I think they should. I found that usually discipline can be as simple as allowing natural consequences to happen to my child. But either way, the saying, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, rings true to me. I took a parenting class a few years ago, and the first thing the instructor did is pull out a mirror and tell us that all of our problems can be solved by the person in the mirror. And taking that class, I realized that it was my fear that was causing me to disconnect and show up in ways that I actually didn't want to show up. I was afraid of what others thought of my parenting, afraid of what my children were becoming, afraid I wasn't good enough or that my husband wasn't good enough. But all that was a lie and a terrible motivation to show up in love when I was stuck in fear. Truer to me now is it doesn't matter what everyone around me is thinking. This isn't about them. And who my children become is 100% their problem and not mine. I could neglect them and they could still become rich, kind, spiritual, successful individuals. I could be a rock star parent, a perfect parent, and my kids could still mess up a lot. In fact, I see that happen every day. We all have a perfect parent, God, who has a whole bunch of kids that mess up all the time in every way. So that just confirms to me that being a perfect parent does not guarantee my children's results. It just benefits me. When I show up in love, I feel better, always. I worried I wasn't good enough and my husband wasn't good enough. Now I know we are and we aren't. We're 50-50, and I love him. God didn't want me to have a perfect husband, and he didn't want my children to have a perfect father or a perfect mother. He wanted us to have a human experience, which again is 50-50, and it's not a problem. It's not a problem if we disagree on what our children should eat, when they should go to bed, how much time they should spend watching TV and playing on the computer. It is possible for me to have my own back on the things that matter to me. When we disagree on parenting, my new thought is, this is interesting. I wonder how it'll work out, because this matters to me in this way and it matters to him in that way. I still get to show up and enforce rules however I want to, and love him and my kids whether we agree or not. If my husband was a clone of me and did everything my way, I wouldn't like him as much as I do, just as he is. But sometimes my brain wants to argue me on that. It wants to say, no, he should agree with us. He should do it this way. But I don't actually really want that. We don't have to see eye to eye to have an awesome family, is a thought that took me a while to grasp, but I absolutely love now. As a final thought for today, I just want to add this. We all just want to be heard. We want to be seen. And as we see ourselves, hear ourselves, and have our own back, it makes it so fun to see and hear others too. This is Christina Stead. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and a disciple of Jesus Christ. He loves me, he loves you, and he loves us. This is Just a Thought, a podcast for parents ready to change their minds